Hi folks, thank you for tuning in to this video. This is number 6 in my series of 10 videos, and this one is about the psychology of lean living, so I hope you enjoy it. Okay then, let's get started with the video on the psychology of living lean. Okay, we all know change is hard. We've all tried to change things in our life and struggled to do that. And back in video 2, I did actually mention neuroplasticity, which is one of the tools that we have in our toolbox to help us change the way we think, the way we do things, change our habits, etc. However, this tool is really only available once you've made a conscious decision to make a change. And reaching that conscious decision may require you overcoming certain psychological barriers. There's usually some kind of turning point that shakes you out of your current state and has you thinking about things differently and opens up the opportunity for you to make changes in your life. We all have these situations in our life where things crop up and then we decide, well, you know what, I'm going to change the way I do things from going on from here. And while that doesn't normally come just as a passing thought, there usually is some big event that takes place that gets you thinking in that way. Now, I'm not recommending that you wait for some tragic event or some life-changing event to actually change the way you think, but let me just give you an example of something that changed my way of thinking. I'm an avid golfer, and I'd show up at the country club in the morning and get prepared to play the round of golf, and I'd put on my golf shoes. So in the process of putting on my golf shoes, I have to bend down, crunch myself up, if you will, and do up my shoelaces. Well, what I was finding that not only was this getting more awkward, I was also getting out of breath. And I'm thinking, why on earth am I getting out of breath just doing up my shoelaces? I must be in really bad shape or something. What I realized was that when I was doing up my laces, I got myself in a position where I was crunched up. And all the excess fat around my belly was actually crunching up my breathing apparatus, and as a result, I was getting out of breath. Once I'd come to that conclusion, I decided to change my life somewhat. I decided to change my nutrition and my lifestyle habits and worked on changing myself so that I could get a lot more healthy. What actually happened was that over a period of about a year, I lost 45 pounds, got back into really good shape, and I never looked back. And the culmination of that process was what I now call the Be Lean for Life protocol. And let's look at another example here. Let's say that a young lady who maybe is a moderate drinker or even drinks to excess for that matter, and she gets pregnant, and she suddenly realizes, well, if I continue to drink during the course of my pregnancy, then that's probably going to hurt the health of the baby. So they stop drinking. Now, I know a lot of people that have done that. Not that they were necessarily huge drinkers, but I know a lot of people, a lot of ladies that is, that never had a touch of alcohol during their pregnancy. And so there was something that changed their mind almost in a flash. So it is possible to change your thought pattern. It is possible to make changes. While changes are hard, certain circumstances will put you in a position where making those changes is worth the effort. And in these two examples, me doing up my golf shoes and a lady that's about to have a baby, those are big enough issues for people to change. So what's one of the keys to making this change? Well, one of the first things you've got to do is to give yourself permission to change. Then you quite easily start to change your habits and lifestyle in order to meet the goals that you are planning to achieve as a result of changing your behaviors. So the mindset is a vital tool in this procedure or process, if you will. Sometimes we call it self-talk, and I'll go into a little more detail on that in a moment. But basically, giving yourself permission and getting into the self-talk situation is something that my Be Lean for Life protocol uses. So one of the vital tools that you need in your tool set here is mindset. So in order to change the way you behave and make yourself in a position to enjoy the benefits of the goals that you're trying to achieve, you have to figure out how to change your mindset. And my Be Lean for Life protocol is a stepwise process that will allow you to get into the position where you can give yourself permission to change and actually physically implement those changes without too many problems. So let's look at the situation where you start to make these changes, and sometimes you go at it with great enthusiasm and you set yourself up for failure by trying to achieve everything 100%. Well, it's not necessary to actually achieve everything you do 100%. I typically use the 80-20 rule for myself when I'm trying to make changes. I don't let myself get unduly upset about not being perfect, because I'm not, so there's no point in trying to do that. But I find that I'm really comfortable with an 80-20 rule, whereby 80% of the time I'm doing things right and the other 20% of the time things just don't go that way. But let me give you an example for argument's sake. Once I got into this new eating protocol, I decided that as I was not able to change the meals that I ate when I went out. I mean, basically, if you go out to a restaurant, then you're not going to get grass-fed protein, you're not going to get good quality vegetables. Let me give you an example of my 80-20 rule, if you will. When I go out to eat, I'm fully expecting that my food is not going to necessarily meet my own personal standards. I know that the vegetables are not necessarily going to be sourced from a good source. I know that the protein probably isn't grass-fed or natural from the ocean or whatever. They've probably been, fish that may have been farmed, and for the most part things are cooked in vegetable oils. So it's a given that the meal that you're going to have in your standard restaurant is not going to be healthy. So when I go to the restaurant, I fully indulge in the process, enjoy the social activity, etc., and then I basically eat whatever I want in that restaurant. Although of course I tend to be a little more careful about what I eat these days, but I don't let it worry me and spoil the evening, knowing full well that the next day I can rectify it. So that's the way I use the 80-20 rule, to give myself a cushion and some comfort without having to worry about being perfect all the time. Another one of the barriers to making changes is the emotions of guilt and shame. If you set yourself out to do something, let's say eat in a certain way, and you fail miserably at that, you start to become, or you start to feel guilty or shameful. Now, shame is a very debilitating emotion, and once you get into that circle, then it gets really difficult to pull out. Of course, ideally you would use your willpower, but as we know in one of my earlier videos, if you have been eating the standard American diet for any length of time, your willpower is probably shot already, so you really don't have that as one of your tools to work with. So the way I look at this is that your thoughts are the language of your brain, and your emotions are the language of your body. So it goes to say that if you think in a certain way, so you will be. So if you start to think that you are doing a bad job, you're not perfect, and you start to get these shame and guilt type emotions, then you really are going to have a serious problem. So try and take all the pressure off by trying not to be perfect. We need to set up certain goals and objectives as we're trying to go down this new path, but let's not go crazy and consider ourselves a total failure if we don't manage to do it 100%. And as I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, through neuroplasticity, you are actually able to change your thought patterns to the point where you can rewire your brain so that you actually think in a different way, and as a result of that you become a different person. And so it becomes a whole lot easier to make these changes when you've got that working for you as well. This concept of becoming a new person also comes into the area of sleep. When you go to sleep, you have three different types of sleep patterns. They would be light sleep, heavy sleep, and REM sleep. One of the things that goes on during REM sleep is that your brain is trying to figure out what happened over the course of the day and rearrange things and set your short-term memory up, maybe put some things in long-term memory. And of course, what's in your memory, especially if you're living in the past, is going to have a big impact on the way you go about things. So if you spend a lot of time during your day thinking in the correct manner, then the likelihood is that when you go to bed at night and have a good night's restful sleep, your REM sleep will help you put everything in the right place so that going forward it's going to be easier to follow the plans that you've set for yourself. I'll give you another example here of thinking negatively and how it affects things. I mean, I'll give you another golf example if you don't mind, but I play a lot of golf. And in the past, when I would approach a situation where I maybe had to hit the ball over water or something like that, I'd be thinking to myself when I'm about to hit the ball, that is, let's not hit the ball in the water, or don't hit the ball in the water. Well, it just so happens that the brain doesn't really understand the concept of don't, but does actually hear the message about the water. And so a lot of the time end up hitting the ball in the water. Now, once I figured that out, I don't think I ever really had any issue with water being a problem on the golf course, unless I absolutely made a really bad shot. But it never became a mental issue for me, and that whole problem went away and my game improved enormously. Another aspect of making these changes comes into the realm of quantum physics, or the quantum field. I have another part of the program that deals with the quantum field, and in this part of the program I'm looking at the situation where the brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and physical manifestation, if you will. So if you think a certain way or you see something in a certain way, the brain doesn't know whether you're thinking it or whether you're seeing it in reality. So what you think has a pretty significant effect on how you go forward. So if you're thinking that you're not going to be successful or things aren't going to go the way you planned, then there's a really good chance that they won't, because your brain sees that potentially as a physical manifestation of you failing, and so it's very easy to fail in that situation. So again, your thoughts have a major impact on whether you're able to make these changes going forward for the rest of your life. So I'd like to reiterate again here, I understand that making change isn't an easy thing to do. The best situation would not to have some serious life-changing event take place before you decide you're going to make the changes. It's better to have figured this out before you get to that life-changing event. And if you do so and you follow the steps in my program, you will find that you will be able to make these changes and live a lot longer, happy, healthy life than you would do if you had been going on down the same road. So as usual, a little piece of good news at the end. We have the answers. We can help you make these changes. So stay tuned.